Okay, so next up, designing for security. So clearly we identified our pain points in general. Then we, in addition to being cognizant of those, have evaluated on a broader scale other pain points by observing our in infrastructure slash our website implementation to see what's not firing as it should. And so now we will design for security. So it's always good to know it beforehand and start designing for security from the get-go. That's always good. But I mean, stuff happens. Sometimes the company wants something and they want it fast, so you don't have the time to secure everything. So you just give them a quick win and then you go back. So I mean, different scenarios may call for different measures, or maybe you're a superstar hacker like Sheldon slash Yannick. So the company calls you in to do an assessment. So then you end up changing up some of the stuff that you see there. So obscurity is always good. So earlier, one of the attacks, the SQL injection, where users you query the users table. So you can name it something like TBL underscore users, or leave out the E out of users, or something like that. So it's not so straightforward, that it's not so plain English and predictable that somebody could just sit and guess and say, I bet you said the table name users. Right? So even like WordPress, and most content management systems, they ask or they enforce a prefix before the table name that they use. Right? So the WordPress, sometimes they allow you to set it. I think the WordPress allows you to set it, but some allow you to set it. God, username G. All right. Yes, I agree, Terry. Or Teresa. It's not. Don't be too obscure. I'm sure Sheldon knows better. But yeah. So that's a good point, Teresa and Sheldon. Don't be too obscure with your naming, of course. But be obscure enough that it can cause some amount of guessing as to what you would have used to store certain information. So in the cited example on the slide, you'll see that the passwords are stored in passwords.txt. If anything, don't make it a text. If you have to name it passwords, don't make it a text file. Don't make it that easy. Just make it a regular file, right? And then you make the file open with WordPress, or make it a binary file or something like .dat. Some stuff like that. Also, you don't have to tell the whole world that, hey everybody, hey, this is going to happen at this time, and during this time, these are all of the security flaws that will be exposed. Please do not browse to my website. That's like putting up a green neon sign and saying, hello, hack time. Right? So, stuff like that. Um, you need to be able to obscure your stuff, or not present too much information for people to be able to guess how your stuff is set up. All right. Of course, authentication is always good. Before you let users beyond certain points of your site, you always authenticate, and the more secure the authentication, the better. So you would use secure protocols, HTTPS. If you have to use FTP, then use SFTP or SSH. SFTP is for Secure File Transfer Protocol. SSH, I can't remember what SSH means, but it is very secure. Alright, I'm sure Yannick and Sheldon will now enlighten my darkness as to what SSH means, but Linux relies heavily on SSH. So those are secure tunnels and channels that you can use, even for data transfer. But for this authentication, yeah, secure shell. Thank you. And it was secure. Oh, Teresia, wait. You joined the ranks too, man. Cool, no? So, so we have 3 hackers in the class as far as I'm concerned. So, yeah, so secure authentication is a good way to mitigate against unauthorized access or use of your resources. All right, we already went through the principle of least privilege. All right, so just have enough, create the users to have just enough power to get something specific done. All right, you also want to disable certain channels if they're not being used, and here you see that secure shell SSH is one of those. All right, if it's not being used, turn it off, because at the end of the day, as much as it's secure, it's also a port, and you want to close all ports except those that are needed for web traffic. All right, of course, 80, we established last class, 80 is essential. Some people actually close 80 and open another one, right? I've actually seen that where there was no port 80 active, then close 80 altogether on the machine, and they pointed IIS to a different, like some 7321, right? Something that you wouldn't guess, like not 81 or 8080 or 8081, just some random number that nobody would guess, and that was the port that their website ran through. So there's also that technique to help to shut down. Yeah, 433. I think that's for FTP, right? 443. Sorry. Right. So you just shut down all protocols that you're not using. I think VTDI blocks FTP globally. So that's one that I know they have shut down. All right. Right. I remember teaching this class and going to show them the FTP upload to website in class, and what a flop it was. Did not work, and then it looked like I couldn't play, I couldn't teach. Right, or I didn't know what I was talking about, when really and truly it's just the VPN was, the FTP was blocked. And yeah, man, yes, Terry, you go on about no, like a hacker. All right. So another way to secure your site is to sanitize input. I would have alluded to that already. You just run through each field just to ensure that they are one, they met the validation. You run regex, so you remove certain characters from the input, or if you detect certain characters, like for instance angle brackets, nobody types with angle bracket, nobody's name has an angle bracket and a slash in it, or a bracket. You know, those things, you just sanitize. So if you detect those things in any of the text fields, you just reject it and say invalid input. Put in something sensible, boss. Because you just assume that this person is trying something malicious. All right. Um, another way to verify security is to, well, consider. So earlier I said that maybe you want to know these stuff before you start coding. So one good way is to consider security before you start building your site. All right. So, sorry. So of course, knowing about it and then coding around that is important. Then after it is being, well, while it is being written, you can always have a second eye, whether it's your lead developer or your co-developer. Just, look at it, and maybe he'll give some insight. He or she will give some insight that you weren't privy to initially. So that always helps. And then after it has been written, then you review. You probably make some case studies, some scenarios, user stories, whatever it must be, to test all the different points, and do your audit to say, okay, under this scenario, this is how this reacted. That was it the right reaction? Was it a wrong reaction? Do we need to secure it more? Blah, right? So then you try and penetration test it at that point. One moment. All right. So, like I just said, security audit, your series of checks. Sometimes you bring in an expert to do that because they may point out certain things to you. But if you're a security expert, you do it yourself, or if you have the in-house resource. Penetration testing, that's when you turn on the heat on the system now to try and hack it. So that's where you're a white hat hacker, or you just give Sheldon a money on the side and say, hey, bring down that, well, maybe Teresa. So bring down this system and tell me what is wrong with it, right? And then you have the risk analysis where in general you say, okay, we've done all that we can, but just in case all that we could do was not enough, what do we do, right? So maybe your security protocol is that if you're breached, you plug out the server, right? Or if you are breached, you run a trace route or something, or you spin up another server to start tracing the intruder's IP, whatever it is, but you run risk analysis. And that is very, very important when developing any system, even independent of security and breaches. Risk assessments are very important. What happens under this scenario? How do we mitigate against that? All right, so these are things that you want to take into consideration when you are developing your systems and going live. All right. So some security audit questions are listed here. I won't go through all of them, but stuff like asking about the passwords. What is your password policy? How you set up your RABAC, your access control list, short, well, otherwise known as RABAC to some extent. Your roles-based access rules. Your audit logs to show who logged in when and who did what, when, where, why. How is backup stored? Is it going to be stored on a hard drive? Is it going to be stored on a tape, on a CD? Is it going to be stored under your desk or in a vault? Even those things are security, those granular things. All right. So you see that website administration is not just about, oh, I built a website and I want to put it on the internet. If you're working inside of an organization, especially like a bank or one of those places with a lot of information that has to be confidential, once you're in IT, you have to be cognizant of all of these factors. And you have to be aware of all the dangers that are possible, right? Your OS security, like where I work, we don't have any Windows 10 machines because Windows 10, I think prior to this update, had too many security breaches or possible loopholes. So we're still with Windows 7 because the security policies on Windows 7 are comfortable enough for us to go about our day-to-day business. All right. So yeah, 10 spice. All right. In terms of cryptography or encryption, so encryption, there are three levels to encryption. You have data in motion, data while in rest. I mean, I'll be quoting it verbatim, or whatever that word is, but just bear with me. So you have three states, yeah, in the general sense: data in motion, data in rest, and data on delivery. Right? So data on motion would allude to while I'm sending you the data, is it encrypted? So HTTPS or SFTP or SSH, those would deal with data in motion. right? So while it is going across the wire, while it's going across the pipe, right? My data is encrypted. So I pay my credit card on PayPal. When I press submit, while it is traveling between the PayPal interface and the PayPal subsystems, that short span, if anybody is sitting in the middle there, when they receive it, it should be very, very encrypted. So they would have to have that encryption algorithm to decrypt it to that, because I think there are 256 SSL now, and maybe 512, I don't know. But I don't know what PayPal is using, but they would have to have that level of sophistication to be able to decrypt it because it was in motion. However, when it gets to the server, or at least when somebody else sees it, then when it's delivered, they can see that it is indeed and in fact whatever was sent, right? It's my plain name, it's my plain password. So right there, that would be encrypting in motion. Then you have the encrypting in while in rest or at rest. So if I have to store the data, and this is where Sony went wrong with PlayStation Network some years ago, when Anonymous hacked Sony PlayStation, right? Well, Sony and the PlayStation Network, they were able to look into all of the user tables and see everybody. Was it Anonymous who did that? I think it was Anonymous who did that, or maybe some other organization that actually was just terrorists. Sorry. Anyway, so they hacked into PlayStation Network, looked at the database, and they could see trevor.williams@gmail.com, username Lone Crusader 1989, password is my text password, plain text. Credit card information, plain text. Everything in the database, plain text. All right. You don't do that. All right. You make sure that what you store is encrypted. The password should be encrypted. I mean, anything critical, because you can get my email address. Okay, big whoop. What are you going to do? Spam me? You understand? But if you get my email address and my password, then you can start going to Facebook and using that combination anywhere and using that combination, clearly. If you get my credit card information, then you know that's a wrap. Because once you have the card number and the CVV, and even then there is, yeah, it was a big shameful. It was a, oh God, sorry. It was a big shame because big Sony storing people's payment information in plain text. The good thing was that I used to buy. They rejected my credit card multiple times because it was not a US card, so I had to buy the payment voucher or some PSN card to buy it on the Sony on Amazon and then redeem it on Sony. So they never had my card info, but I definitely would have been in that lot had it been otherwise, right? So anyhow, um, encrypt it while in rest. So when you store it, if you have to store certain files that have sensitive data, try to encrypt them so that if somebody looks at the files, they won't be able to understand what they're looking at least not at first glance or something. All right. So that is encrypting in rest. And then encrypting on delivery would mean that I am sending you an encrypted file. So whether it is encrypted while in rest or not, but sending it to you, it is going to be delivered as an encrypted file or encrypted message. So you, the receiver, have to decrypt it on your end afterwards, but you won't be seeing the regular data. So those are three things that you need to consider when you're designing out your systems, especially with this whole service-oriented architecture thing being touted. These REST calls and these the SOAP calls. Most of the REST nowadays, everybody abandoning SOAP and running on to JSON. All right, but you have to consider these things when you're designing, because if somebody can sit down and see your payloads easily, then they can see what's going on. So of course you need the HTTPS. When you store it in your database, you need to make sure you encrypt the most important bits. Maybe even the username you can encrypt, or the email address you can encrypt, stuff like that. And then depending on who you're dealing with, make sure you send across a secure channel and maybe it will send an encrypted file across a secure channel. Or if there's no secure channel, send the encrypted file and then provide instructions to them how to how to um, decrypt it. And yeah, Sheldon, as Sheldon said, you can just encrypt everything and use comparisons when validating, right? Exactly. I completely agree. So those are things that you can look at when you're doing your security, um, your security evaluations. All right. So I included a few videos. I hope they're still up. If they're not, let me know. But these should give some insight and some further info into, looking at flaws, what are possible flaws, and the way you can secure your Apache or your IIS, how you can use SSL certificates. Um, well, I didn't look up for the other servers per se. As I said, this class is really around Apache and IIS, and even more so Apache. Um, but I mean, if you need any help with any other server, you can always link me, and I'll help you research it. Considering that I don't have much more experience with any other servers outside of those two. All right. So that's pretty much it for today's session. Um, yeah, Sheldon say broke Nginx. All right, so that's it for today's session. I hope this provided some amount of insight for you. Um, and I hope that at least now you look at websites differently and you'll be less frivolous with your credit card on the internet if you weren't already. And going forward, I hope that you guys will exercise these measures when designing your systems, using websites, and even helping other people design their systems. So I've never done more than a one security course, but you do have security experts. So if you see this as something that you would love to do, then you can always look up those security certifications and get those big money when people like Scotiabank call you in as a security consultant now on stuff. All right, so Teresa says her defense mechanism is that she looks out for PayPal. So if you know deal with PayPal, then you can't do business. um, well, Nuts for the Express doesn't use PayPal, so unless you're going to walk in and buy a ticket. But I get what you're saying though. So yes, we're going to call it a night. Happy Ash Wednesday, everybody, and enjoy and don't do anything I wouldn't do. So um, everything is in the Dropbox already. So this slideshow is already in the Dropbox, so you can always go back and reference it. I recorded these sessions, so I'll just upload them as soon as I finish here. And available for dialogue throughout the night. If you have any difficulties with your assignment so far, feel free to contact me. And please, page 2 of the assignment document speaks to how you need to submit the stuff. I don't want any physical files. I don't want anybody sending me a video file and or a zip file. The instructions say upload the video file to somewhere. It can be YouTube, it can be Vimeo for like here. I don't, once I can click the link and watch it, I'm fine. I don't want any physical files. So upload it somewhere, share that link, and also the website files to another sharing site. And it should be 2 sets of website files, one for the IIS and one for the WAMP. All right, upload them to their respective file shares and share with me. It can be a Dropbox, it can be Google Drive. Just I don't want any physical files in my inbox. All right, so take it easy. and you can just message me or email me for the remainder of the class session if you need any more guidance. All right, so take care.